Hello again. So today I'm going to talk about Strava. Is it good for endurance cycling training? Well, yeah, I think it is. I think it's great. I spent a long time pondering this, and it's taken me all day to try and figure it out because I started trying to demonstrate it with the tools in Strava, and then compared it with Training Peaks, and I decided then that Strava wasn't that good for it for various reasons. And then after a bit of thought, I think it is really useful and an effective tool, and this is why. So those of you who have watched my videos before will probably know that I say, well, train for endurance first because you want to be sure that you can finish. So you can see the training calendar gives you a nice overview of the number of hours you've done, the number of kilometres you've completed, and this is like for a year, so this is 2021, and the number of activities. So it's useful to know all this information. And then if you click on a particular month, you can then get an idea of what you've been up to in that particular month, and it just gives you the same data. So number of hours, number of kilometres, number of personal records. That's the calendar, and you can see actually if you look at the particular days, you can see where you've done the long ride in the calendar. That's all part of the free tool. So you can watch your progress as you continue to build the volume of your training week on week, month on month, and actually over years as you train for more challenging events. And also you can drill down into the particular workouts, and you can see when your long rides are, which are quite important factors for training for endurance sport, to be able to see and track this progression. There's another feature which I really like, is these matched rides. So the matched rides show you progress over time. You can see whether you're getting faster, slower, and as you can see here that the trend is gradually faster, so that's a good thing. And the great thing about the match rides is that you don't have to be aiming to do a personal record, personal best on each ride. You just ride your normal ride, do your normal training rides, and as you get fitter, you'll be getting faster. So it's a nice way of seeing that the submaximal training, which is fundamentally important to develop your endurance fitness, is working. Because if you're doing an endurance event, you know, your FTP and your VO2 max and the powers that you achieve to get to your VO2 max are not really that important to your performance. If you're doing a bikepacking event, for instance, that takes several days, you're not going to be anywhere near your FTP. So if you use this match rides thing and you ride at your race pace, your event pace, then you can see how you're actually getting faster at the event pace, which is much more relevant than it would be to test your FTP every 6 weeks or something like that. Obviously, FTP is important, and it's a good building up your threshold power is a good way to bring everything else up. But the real thing that is specific to your event is how fast you ride in these rides. And obviously you'll see, you know, if it's a really bad day, if it's really windy or it's really bad weather, you'll probably be a bit slower than you would be in better weather conditions. So you have to bear that in mind, because cycling's not very well, cycling's really influenced by the weather. So you have to take that into account when you're looking at the matched rides. I mean, obviously if you're riding with a power meter, you can look at your performance, your average powers. But this gives you a nice graph. Then there's more challenging things where you do segments, which people have set up segments. They might have been on a hill climb or even a descent, and you then get ranked on the various segments. So let's have a look at that. So you can see on this downhill I've done my best time, and if I were to look at that, I'll be able to see how that ranked amongst other people of my age or my body weight. My third best time on that particular climb. And then as you drill down into those sort of details, you can see how well you're doing. And that these segments are really motivating, and also they're really quite useful for training, as a training. So if you wanted to do an interval session and you wanted to do it at something around your sort of VO2 max efforts, maximal aerobic efforts, which are quite good for building up your FTP, which obviously is important to bring everything else up. Your aerobic threshold is going to come up if you improve your FTP. You can find some segments that are like about 5 minutes long, 3 to 5 minutes, and if you find one or a few that are close together, so if you find one you can do it 3 or 4 times, just sort of freewheel back down if it's an uphill. So you're getting about the same recovery as you get as you using on the climb, and then have a bit of a break. You could go to another one that's a little bit different and do that 3 or 4 times. And then if you've done like 2 sets of 4 or 5 by 3 or 4 minutes with the same recovery as the length of your effort, with 10 or 15 minutes between, then you've done a really good workout. And it's actually sometimes a bit more interesting to do that than actually a fully structured workout whereby you might be doing 2 sets of 4 by 5 minutes with 5 minutes recoveries on an indoor trainer. I mean, they've both got their place, but as you get closer to your event, you might want to do it, particularly if you're doing an off-road event, you might want to choose some segments to do so that you're actually training on representative terrain. So the other aspect of this is it brings in 2 really important things for motivation, and it's been shown that a combination of competition and social aspects are the best ways to maintain motivation in training or in exercise. And as you can see, you've got competition in trying to improve your performance on these segments, and also the social aspect as you give each other kudos, or you look at what your friends have been up to and make a comment and say, well, you know, that looked like a good ride. Or you could, you know, if you change the title of your rides, people could see what you're up to, and you're sort of sharing in the environment. And particularly in recent times where it's been difficult to ride with other people, this can be a really useful way of sharing the experience and very motivating. The thing really to be bearing in mind on these segments, so King of Mountains, Queen of Mountains, is that you don't want to be, it's really easy to get carried away and you just end up really tired, and then this world of mediocrity, which I quite often talk about, in that if you do everything at a quite hard, if all your training's too hard, like quite hard basically, you can't do any really hard training. So you need to be like maybe 2 sessions a week where you're training really hard, and all the rest should be fairly easy. So use these matched rides where you're just training easy. You don't have to get faster every time. You probably get slower sometimes, but that doesn't matter. It's just keeping the consistency there. And then when you want to train hard, train really hard and really go for it. If it's a maximal aerobic type of session, you can be aiming to get a personal best on each climb, because you 3 minutes flat out, you get 3 minutes recovery. You're an endurance athlete, you could probably recover almost fully by then. And then when you reach the point that you can't ride at maximal effort, then that's time to stop and either have your 10 or 15 minute break or go home and have a cup of tea or a beer. So that's really good. So if you like these videos, please give me a like, obviously subscribe if you want to see more. But there are some drawbacks with Strava which led me to think, well, Strava's not that good for endurance training, but then I changed my mind and I think it is really good, and therefore I decided to make this video, whereas before I wasn't going to. So you can't create your own plan in Strava. So if planning's important to you and you want to plan things out so that you can follow a plan, then Strava's not so good for that. So you'd need to use a different tool. You could use a spreadsheet. I guess you could use Training Peaks. Training Peaks and Strava work really well together. Or you could write it on a bit of paper. And so I thought this was a showstopper. But then when I thought about it more, I thought, well, actually, training to feel is a really good way to train, and really effective. And also, I quite like to have the similar workout on a similar day each week. So if you know on Tuesdays or Wednesdays you're always going to do your hard session, and on Saturday or Sunday you're always going to do your long ride, well, it doesn't really matter whether you've got a plan. You just think, all right, on Tuesday I'm going to try for some segments, or I'm going to try that long climb and ride it at tempo pace and see if I'm getting any fitter at that tempo pace, see if I get any faster. Compare your time over previous segments, and if you use a power meter or a heart rate monitor, you can see whether your average heart rate or your average power relates to the duration of the segment, and in that way you can check progression. If you're continually getting slower, then you're probably doing something wrong, because you should gradually be getting faster. You don't always get faster on every ride, but you should be gradually getting faster, and if you're not gradually getting faster, then you're doing it wrong. And similarly, your long ride at the weekend, well, if you always do your long ride on a Saturday or Sunday, you're just trying to build up that long ride. So You don't really need a detailed plan in all cases. Although, obviously, if you work with a coach, then you do need to interact somehow, and then Strava isn't really as good for doing that. So you would need a different way of communicating. I use Training Peaks with my athletes because it's got a lot of really good communication features as well as the analysis tools. So, and I think that's what makes it actually a great tool, is the communication. And also the advanced tools for tracking aren't quite as nice as they are in Training Peaks, but I don't see that as a strong weakness, actually. In fact, if you look at the tracking tools within the workout, we can have a quick look now if you like. This is what they call relative effort, and as you can see, you can look at heart rate, power curve, so distribution of zones, distribution of every 25 watts. So your power distribution, it's how much time you spent in zones basically. And as you can see along here, it looks at different rides that you've been doing, or the relative effort per week, and therefore you can see to make sure that you're not like that there looks like a bit of an anomalous week. So what you would really want to be doing is making sure that that was a one-off, or it's something that you'd plan to do, and make sure you have an easy week after. Now, this could be a forced recovery because that's been too hard, or it might actually be planned to have a couple of weeks easy and then start building up again. And then the other factor to bear in mind is, if you want to really get nerdy about your analysis of your training, then Training Peaks or Strava or Final Surge or these sort of training diary type tools are a sort of a mid-level, and the higher level tools like WKO5 and Golden Cheetah, they're where the real analysis takes place. And Strava links directly to a tool called Golden Cheetah, which is free, it's open source, and also the science behind it is all open source, so you can actually see really what's happening, which I really like. So that's that. Yeah, Strava's great. If you have any questions or comments, I'd really love to know what you think about it. Please make a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.